What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here, back with JaboctheGreat. Welcome to another episode of The Last Word. Today, before we get into our weekend picks, as we always do on Thursday and Friday, kind of want to talk about the early season of both college football and the NFL. Right now, we're about a fourth of the way through the NFL season, about a third of the way through college football. Been interesting to say. So far, it's not to say the least. It's been very interesting. Um, in both the NFL and college football, but we're going to start in college. And we just talked about it in our last video, or one of our last videos. Alabama, Georgia, that was a huge game. And we were talking about it before the video that ended up with Alabama at number 1 in the AP poll, which I kind of agree with what you said before we started recording. I think it is kind of a surprise. I didn't expect Alabama to be right back up at number 1 this early in the season. But they definitely deserve it after beating Georgia. But when you look at the other kind of big names, I mean, really the only thing that's super surprising there is, Michigan, they take that beating by Texas, but then they come back, they're right back up at number 10. Obviously, after losing a lot of guys from the championship team last year, losing their coach, obviously to LA. Kind of surprising to not only see them back up there, but right above USC, who they beat, and USC is right a couple of spots above LSU, with Ole Miss sandwich in the middle, who we'll talk about in our pick video in a little bit. But for you, like, what are your biggest kind of surprises and even disappointments so far to start?
Yeah, I think honestly, Alabama is a big one. There's no world where I thought Alabama wouldn't be good, but to be, number one at week 6, I was like, all right, well, we're getting there a little early, aren't we?
Yeah,
But the Georgia matchup, I guess, sets you up for that, especially if you win that game. If they lost, I'm sure they'd still be ranked, but beating Georgia and getting up to number 1 is pretty surprising. I'll say that Texas being number 2, or the amount of time that Texas has been, up there for number 1, up there for number 2. In no world did I think Texas would be bad, but it is just kind of like man, they are like really good. They are a number 1 team, and then to kind of get more in the middle, Miami being top 10, knew Miami would be good this year, but I feel like in recent years Miami has had like good talent and then they squander it somehow. They've had a few weird games, controversial stuff going on in the Virginia Tech one, but they're 5-0, they're 8th. Clemson found an offense after beating Georgia, or after losing to Georgia, and is doing well. And then my other like positive surprise, I think, would be Boise State being ranked number 21. That's nice to see them just get up there from the big Mountain West. Their running back Ashton Jeanty has been insane. Just good to see them kind of doing well and getting recognition. Unfortunate surprises would maybe be one more positive, I guess, is that UNLV has cracked in to the top 25. I will, however, say that I am not very pro UNLV because of what
oh
they've been
yeah,
doing. Yeah,
yeah.
the I'm not going to take the side of the organization. I feel like the quarterback and the other player who left were in the right for leaving. They were lied to essentially about the money. So good on the guys who were at UNLV to stick with it, get 4-0 and get top 25. But no harm, no wrong on those guys who left because they were straight up lied to. Disappointments would probably be that Notre Dame took a loss to NIU. NIU played a great game. They ended up ranked. Now they're gone. But that's a big loss for Notre Dame. Florida State, as a Clemson fan, I think one of the things I think about every year, and Clemson student, is like, you want to have ranked opponents on your schedule, and especially since we play in the ACC, people don't really care if you're beating up random teams from South Carolina.
Yeah.
Example, we play the Citadel later this year. Nobody's going to care about that one unless we lose. So Florida State being horrible is not great for us. They've fallen completely off. DJ has hurt his hand though, and won't be playing against us this coming week. In a similar vein, Louisville falling down, losing that game a week ago, falling as far as they did, falling below us, also kind of hurts from the Clemson student perspective of, we need them to be up there. There's just some things here and there. USC losing to Michigan was a tough one for me. I think I'm firmly a Michigan hater, so tried to in our video tried to manifest a Trojans victory, and that didn't quite work. So yeah, I think those are probably it for me. I'm kind of an ACC perspective on this one, just as the guy who's, this year it looked like we had an ACC that Clemson could maybe make a run through and look a little better, especially considering the way Clemson's played the past few years. But each of our ACC opponents keeps getting on the big stage and proving to maybe not be that big, except for Miami. So I don't know if we play Miami in the regular season. I can't entirely remember, but yeah. And then as I go to pass it back to you to get your final thoughts on the subject, I did just like it's like my eyes were trying not to see it, but BYU being 17th is
Oh,
certainly
true.
interesting.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I said I wasn't surprised by them being up there. So good on them. Um, yeah,
Yeah, you can go back to the ACC kind of FSU, obviously. I mean, that is we've chronicled them enough. I don't think there's really much else to say about Florida State this year. I mean, I said it after the week 2 loss, because I guess I meant the second loss because they lost 2 games week 1. But as the number 10 team in the country. But after the second loss in week 1, I kind of said it like I think they're just demoralized. They're kind of cooked. That wasn't really that big a deal anymore. Miami had a little bit of a scare last week, but they're up there. I mean, especially coming off that first game against Florida, they went into the swamp, embarrassed them, tried to steal some recruits. I mean, they did their thing. We'll see if the U is back, like we've been talking about Texas being back for all these years we've been doing the podcast. Um, but yeah, I think going forward, we kind of look at this weekend. We'll talk about this again in the picks video in a minute here. This weekend probably not the best weekend for ranked matchups. You got one singular one, but you've got that picked later, Missouri and Texas. Otherwise, not too much going on. But the next 2 weeks after that, you got some heavy hitters going on. You got Penn State, USC. You've got Ohio State, Oregon. I mean, that's going to be a couple big matchups there. Up in the Big Ten, Week 8. Miami. You mentioned Louisville as well. They can match up. You got Georgia, Texas. You got Alabama. Like you've got some pretty big matchups here. Alabama with Tennessee. Like even Michigan, Illinois. I guess another good Big Ten matchup if Illinois stays up there. So you've got some pretty big matchups the next couple of weeks. So I think things will get a little bit more sorted out. Even going into Week 10, you got Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State, Penn State. So I think as we get into that second third of the season, into November, past Halloween, where it really kind of gets into the thick of things. We're gonna see who these teams really are. Everybody's joking about Ohio State, even saying they play like 3 preseason games. I think that's pretty accurate. They've gotten out of their preseason now. Those start playing some heavy hitters. So, yeah, I think we've got a good couple weeks in store for us for sure.